The Center for Truth and Justice are holding their third annual conference in Armenia on human rights and accountability, pathways to post-conflict justice from September 11 to September 13. On September 12, on the second day of the conference, we had the chance to talk to Sthíven Rափ, who served as the U.S. Ambassador at large for war crimes issues from 2009 to 2015.
Everyone has a right to continue to live in their homes, live safely. They've lived there for decades. And whoever has political control, they can't just force people out.
Mr. Rափ addressed Azerbaijan's 2023 attack on Nagorno-Karabakh, focusing on the distinction between military targets and civilian objects. He emphasized that assessing whether these distinctions were properly made and determining compliance with international law is a complex process that requires significant evidence.
But if you intentionally hit civilians, and certainly we have this whole aspect in which there was a forcible deportation of the civilians, essentially creating such dangers and risks to civilian life and property that people had no choice but to abandon their homes and leave Artsakh and go into Armenia, where they're refugees here now. And so, that usually means that a lot of violence has been directed against the civilian population, motivated not by a military objective of trying to destroy the Artsakh army, for instance. The broader aspects of the conflict and the whole pattern of conduct does point to this intent to forcibly deport the population, and that intent is illegal, and that crime, that act is illegal under international law.
Addressing the distinction between non-international and international armed conflicts in relation to accountability for violations of international humanitarian law, Rափ noted that much of the law governing armed conflicts applies to both civil wars and international conflicts. However, he highlighted that certain provisions, such as the principle of proportionality under the ICC statute, are limited to international armed conflicts and do not extend to civil wars.
The classification of it is difficult. I mean, was Artsakh a country? I mean, I have a visa. When I went there in 2019, it operated as a country and issued visas, and people were admitted. On the other hand, it wasn't recognized by any other state. And so, was it a state, or was it a sort of a breakaway entity within the larger Azerbaijan state, etc.? And people obviously in this region will debate that issue intensively. But in the end, the judges will have to decide. And to a large extent, when you look at what's a state, you look at whether it acted like a state, whether it operated with independence, etc., whether it had borders, etc. Those are the standards under the Montevideo Convention, for instance. So I think there would be an argument that this was an international armed conflict.
Lastly, the ambassador outlined the potential legal pathways available for the families of killed civilians and injured survivors to seek justice after the attack.
I mean, most systems do attempt, after judgment, to obtain restitution for the victims as part of the sentence if there's a conviction. And sometimes that also includes reparations, more than just getting your property back, but a compensation for your injury and disability and everything else, and for the emotional harm that was committed. And so certainly if a case were brought under universal jurisdiction in Germany or in France, for instance, there would be such rights, and under current German law and under traditional French law, the victims could also file their own case and pursue it as a sort of a private prosecutor, but it would still have to be accepted by a judge to pursue it, and then the public prosecutor could join that case. Other places, it has to be the prosecutor himself or herself to begin the case, to actually do it in court. The ICC does provide for victim participation, but it's not really very meaningful until the prosecutor begins the case.
The second day of the international conference delved into global strategies for prosecuting international crimes, challenges and innovations in international criminal law, and methods for pursuing justice and reparations.